indications early on he knew this guy had sexual harassment issues. Why would he put his own political fortunes at risk by hiring this guy?
Well, because Boris Johnson basically has done this his entire life. You know, he's been fired twice from previous jobs, once on a newspaper for lying, once when he was fired by a previous Conservative Prime Minister for lying. Boris Johnson has a massive problem with the truth and is finally caught up with him here. He should never have hired this guy Pincher. Everybody in Westminster knew what he was like. He'd admitted to various offences, albeit they hadn't reached a criminal stage. And Boris Johnson promotes him, not just to any old job, Brian, he promotes him to the guy who's literally in charge of disciplining other members of parliament. You can make it up. And of course, it's finally come back to haunt Boris Johnson. And then when he was caught, he did what Boris Johnson always does, and he tried to lie his way out of it. And he got caught. Various civil servants who work behind the scenes in places like Downing Street came forward to say, actually, this is all a pack of lies. He knew all about it. He was told specifically about what the allegations were against this guy, and he ignored that to promote him. You just can't do that.
Yeah, Piers, explain how it works there, because now he has stepped down as the head of the Conservative Party, but he's going to stay on as the Prime Minister. It sounds like he would like to until October. He'll completely be a lame duck, but how does it work over there?
Well, we actually have another phrase for him, greasy piglet. This has been headline in many papers because Boris Johnson, if you can imagine a particularly greasy piglet, that's what he's like. Every time you catch him, he sneaks away with all the grease slipping away. And he's done this his entire career, and he's done it throughout his premiership. But I think that what he's trying to do now is buy as much time as he can. Boris Johnson believes that things happen. You know, there's always something around the corner that can get you off the wrap. He is trying to buy time by saying, look, I will continue as Prime Minister until you have a new leader in place. Now, the process in this country for electing a new leader in these circumstances is very straightforward. Any one of the Conservative members of Parliament can run for leader. They have to get 8 other Conservative MPs to nominate them. Then they all go into a big pot, all the ones who've got the 8 people endorsing them. And then the other Conservative MPs in totality finalize down to 2 people. So you'll end up with 2 candidates, and then it goes to 100,000 Conservative members. These are regular members of the public who happen to be members of the Conservative Party, paid up members. They then cast their votes and choose ultimately who will be the leader. But this process, particularly given that Parliament breaks up for the summer recess in about 2 weeks, this process can take the rest of the summer, and we wouldn't have a new leader before September, possibly October. And it just seems to most people here completely ridiculous that Boris Johnson, many of whose own ministers have quit in the last, 50-odd have quit in the last 24 hours because I don't trust him and think he should go, that he would now try and limp on like the ultimate greasy piglet meat flame duck until October.
So when I heard his speech and Brian was talking about, he was pretty composed. He had all these hecklers and he was giving a speech. I told Brian off camera, I said, I think he's just auditioning to get on some board from some, globalist company and showing that he's still alive. But from what I'm hearing you say right now, you think maybe he thinks his political career is not over.
I think Boris Johnson doesn't play by the normal rules. Many people think he's the kind of Donald Trump of the UK. He just basically thinks rules are for other people. And I think that all politicians crave power. And he, at the moment, remains Prime Minister. And I think that he thinks the process is so slow, it can buy him time to potentially try and do something which will keep him in office. I don't think anybody else shares that view other than Boris Johnson. And there's a rising tide of anger from Conservative members of Parliament today that think that this is ridiculous and he should go immediately. My gut feeling is he will have to go very soon, because I think that this is unprecedented. Just to put it into context, over 50 of his own ministers, so these are senior members of his government, resigned within 24 hours. Which is just like, we've never seen anything like this in this country. And so that collective, massive, we're not confident in you anymore, we don't trust you, we don't want you to stay. The idea he can wriggle on, I think, is for the birds.
Piers, a couple of things come to mind. We might be in the same situation by having the President of the United States basically say, I'm not running again. He might be saying that in a few months. And you have a lame duck, no leader at an extremely valuable time. We're coming out of a pandemic. We have this global slowdown and maybe a global recession. You guys got high inflation, too. You got an international crisis. You got Vladimir Putin still on the march. He was playing a valuable role in galvanizing the UK people and NATO. You can't afford, I don't think we can afford, the West can afford to have the UK vacant for 4 months. Can we?
No, absolutely not. And you've hit the nail on the head. This is an incredibly difficult time for the world right now. Still in a pandemic, war in Europe for the first time in many decades, financial crisis. We've got huge cost of living issues in the UK, as you have in America. And this is a farcical situation where now all the attention will be going on whether Boris Johnson stays on a few days, a few hours, a few weeks, a few months. It shouldn't be about him. We need to cut him off, get rid of him. And I said to someone yesterday, if it comes to him, as somebody said at Downing Street, you're going to have to drag him kicking and screaming out of Downing Street. And I said, well, I am prepared to stand up, perform my civic duty and physically drag him out of there if it comes to it, because we need to have leadership in this country. And what about this, Brian? You think it couldn't get any more ridiculous? The leader of the opposition party, Sir Keir Starmer, who runs the Labour Party, we are waiting to hear any day now from Durham police force about whether he will get fined for having a lockdown breaking beer and pizza party, or a curry, I think it was. And if he does get fined, he's already made a pledge that he will immediately resign. So we could have, at the precise moment you would think an opposition leader would be getting the champagne out, he might also have to resign. So this is we are now into complete chaos.
A pizza scandal. A pizza and beer scandal.
Yeah. Hey, Piers.
Pizza and an Indian meal, I think it was. I think from memory.
Well, it's great for you. It gives you something to talk about in your show. So who's in the wings who could take over the Conservative Party, and would they take the Conservatives in a different direction?
Well, it's a very interesting question because the party is very split over the ongoing issue of Brexit. So Brexit, of course, where the UK departed from the European Union. Boris Johnson won that. He famously campaigned on let's get Brexit done. And so I think it's important, probably for continuity, that whoever that leader is ought to be somebody who believes in Brexit, because otherwise you're basically going against the democratic vote of the country in the referendum. But there are lots of runners and riders of this. This is not a clear-cut thing at all. I don't think there's any standout favourite. You've got Ben Wallace, the defence minister. He's seen as a pretty solid pair of hands. He's had a good war, as they put it, with Ukraine. People respect him, I think. You've got Liz Truss, the foreign secretary. She's already turned a plane round. I think she was in Indonesia or somewhere. Wow. She's come straight back to run her leadership campaign. You've got Rishi Sunak, who resigned as the Chancellor. He will be putting his hat in the ring. Sajid Javid, interesting story, son of a bus driver, Pakistani immigrants to the country. He will want to be there. What about this story? Nadeem Zahawi was the education secretary in charge of education. He was promoted 36 hours ago to Chancellor to replace Rishi Sunak for Chancellor. Wow. And yet this morning, he wrote a letter to Boris Johnson, the man who just promoted him to one of the most powerful jobs in the country, telling him, I've lost confidence, you've got to go. This is like Game of Thrones meets The Sopranos.
Right. Your foreign secretary was going to the G20, another important conference with Vladimir Putin there and the leader of, with the foreign secretary there, Lavrov, and the leader of China.
One person loving this, Brian. The one person loving all this chaos, both in the UK and the US, and all the uncertainty, is Vladimir Putin. This all plays right into his hands. This is what he wants to see. Countries that should be united to try and stop his rampage through Ukraine actually splintering into complete chaos and a vacuum of leadership. This is a really bad time for us to be going through this, as indeed is the situation, I think, in America right now, with a very weak president, an even weaker vice president, and wonders whether Joe Biden can even get through his first term. So if you're Putin, you're licking your lips at all this.
Yeah.
Well, I just think, before we go, I would say that the green policies have made the West weaker. And I think that this is all showing itself with the energy crises that we're facing that's completely unnecessary and in Europe as well. I call this the Green New Deal war because it precipitated much of it.
We've become ridiculously dependent in Europe on Russian energy. And in fact, Donald Trump, to his credit, Donald Trump warned people, particularly about Germany's massive over-reliance, and he kept telling the Germans, he kept telling everyone, you cannot be this dependent on Putin for your energy, because if he wants to, he'll click his fingers and turn it off. That's exactly what we're now seeing.
And you can't be dependent on green energy that's not ready. So we could have helped provide that energy for Europe, but that didn't happen.
And Piers, let me just make an observation. You are just as effective with a blazer on as you are without a blazer. Yeah, I mean, I don't think you need the blazer. I need the blazer. You do not.
I just thought I'd go a little bit al fresco. It's all happening here. I've been up since about 5 o'clock this morning. It's been raging all day. There were 5 ministers quit before 7 o'clock in the morning. It's been total chaos. So this is my slightly more casual look. But rest assured,
it's the journalist look.
Beneath the casual look is a steely-eyed laser focus on the chaos unfurling in the country.
Thank you.
Well, we've been loving your show, Piers Morgan, Uncensored on Fox Nation, weekdays at 4:30 p.m. He just made some big news with Macy Gray. And so everyone will keep watching that show on Fox Nation.
Macy Gray had the audacity to say what she thought a woman was. How dare a woman actually say that a woman is a woman? I mean, preposterous.
Where did she get off saying that?
Yeah. Well, she's backtracked already.
All right. There he is, Piers Morgan, al fresco from London. Sir, thank you very much for joining us live.
And stealing.
Great to talk to you, as always. Thanks, guys.
All right.